All right, so moving on to the next segment, keeping up with things in the NBA world, I will be sharing my contenders or pretenders in the Western Conference. Like I did on last week's episode, I'm going to rank the top 10 teams that are currently in position to make the play-in tournament if the season ended today, from starting with the 10th seed all the way to the first seed in the Western Conference. So starting with the Oklahoma City Thunder, I do believe this team is they are pretenders. They're a young, talented team that is still developing. Will be contenders within the next 2 to 3 years. I think Oklahoma City Thunder's plan of trading away guys like Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and acquiring massive draft picks will pay off for them in the next few years. So I can see them being legit contenders and shaping up the Western Conference in the next 2 to 3 years. The future is bright with this roster. They have SGA, who was an All-Star this year. They have Josh Giddey and Chet Holmgren, the second overall pick in the 2022 draft, who unfortunately did not get to play a game this season due to the fact that he will be sidelined for the whole entire season. So that's going to be a future big three that is in the making. Their time will be coming very, very soon in the next upcoming years, but the time is not now. Therefore, they are pretenders. The Golden State Warriors, they are contenders. You can never count out this dynasty when healthy. I don't care what is going on in the Western Conference. As long as you have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Steve Kerr at the head coach, there will always be a threat in the Western Conference. Once they get into the playoffs, I don't know if they're gonna have to go in the play-in tournament. Well, things have shaping out in the West. I don't know if they're gonna be the 8th seed in the West. But I do know for a fact they can beat anybody that is in the Western Conference when healthy in a 7-game series. You can't count them out, and they have a legit shot to win because they have the championship DNA in them. They have won a total of 4 championships together, that being Steph, Klay, and Draymond, and Steve Kerr. They know what it takes to elevate that young roster to help them win another championship. There's a group of guys that never won a championship last year, and Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga. All those guys have now realized or have tasted championship gold. And they will not hesitate to get back there if they're all healthy. And they'll be giving a lot of teams a lot of fits in a 7-game series. I like their chances. If they can go on to fix their problems that they suffer on the road, they're not a good road team this year, and they can fix up their defense, this team could get right back to where they were last year in a deep playoff run or get back to the NBA Finals. Golden State Warriors are definitely contenders. Let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. They are pretenders. Most disappointing team, in my opinion, this NBA season. If you guys haven't checked out the latest bonus content video is now available on our pages, where I displayed how I felt about the Timberwolves and the Atlanta Hawks of being the both disappointing teams in the Eastern and Western Conference this year. But the duo of Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert has not paid off for the Timberwolves this NBA season. The experiment, to me, has failed so far. They will not be able to beat any top team in the Western Conference in a 7-game series. Therefore, I am declaring the Timberwolves as pretenders. Moving on to the New Orleans Pelicans, I consider this team as contenders as long as there's a healthy Zion Williamson on the court. If there's no healthy Zion Williamson, I'm claiming this team as pretenders. The Pelicans is a team that can shock a lot of people in the playoffs. Without Zion, they were just 2 games shy of advancing to the second round of the playoffs, nearly knocking out the Phoenix Suns, who were the number 1 seed in the West last year. They have a pretty good roster, and they've been pretty good when all these guys are on the court together. They have Zion Williamson, they have C.J. McCollum, they have Brandon Ingram, they have Valanciunas. With a young team that they have a lot of good depth, and they're a good defensive team as a whole. If the only question mark to me for Zion is if this hamstring injury is a problem moving forward and he misses more time, this team could find themselves playing in the play-in tournament. And we all know when teams play in the play-in tournament, if you're not a legit team, you don't stand a chance once you get to the playoffs. It's 50-50 to me. If Zion is there, they're contenders. If they're not, they're pretenders. Moving on to the Dallas Mavericks, I do believe that this team, they are pretenders, and this was a 50-50. This is a coin flip to me, but I'm claiming them as pretenders. As good as a duo as Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving sounds on paper, it sounds like a match made in heaven when you talk about putting together the best guards that the NBA has to offer together on a roster. It's not going to be good enough to contend in a loaded Western Conference. If you do the math on it, these obviously it's very very early with these two playing together. They only played 2 games together, but they've lost both of those games. But when you look at it, when they get to the playoffs, they're gonna have to Luka and Kyrie are gonna have to combine score a total of 65 points combined or more on a nightly basis to take out a top team in the West in a 7-game series. That to me is just not going to be good enough to consider themselves as contenders. I felt like it was a mistake before the NBA trade deadline. I thought it was a great move getting Kyrie Irving, bringing him to Dallas to play alongside Luka. But the mistake I thought before the deadline, they did not get another star or another player that can bring the best out of Luka and Kyrie on the Dallas Mavericks roster. I thought DeMar DeRozan would have been a shoe-in, perfect fit to trade him to Dallas and pair him up with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. They really could have helped him. He really could have helped them out in a playoff run, matching up with a lot of great teams in the West, but that did not happen. There's not another guy that could truly step up on their roster to take the pressure off of Kyrie Irving or Luka Doncic. To me, in a 7-game series, if both guys have bad shooting nights, it's a wrap. The team is going to be eliminated. And the Dallas Mavericks right now, looking at their roster right now, they don't have any guys that can take the pressure off of them. Therefore, I'm labelizing the Mavericks as pretenders. Look at the Phoenix Suns. I believe this team has officially put their shoe in to be contenders. They have the best starting 5 in the NBA today on paper when you talk about Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, T.J. Warren, and DeAndre Ayton. That's a good starting 5, and to me, that's the best starting 5 in the NBA on paper. Once Kevin Durant comes back from injury and builds chemistry with Chris Paul and Devin Booker on the floor on a nightly basis, I believe this team will be hard to beat on a nightly basis, and damn sure going to be hard to beat in a 7-game series. Kevin Durant is currently averaging 29 points per game. Devin Booker is currently averaging 26 points per game this NBA season. 2 of the best shooters and 2 of the best scorers that the game has to offer, and the NBA will be joining up and playing together. This is going to be exciting. To me, they are the favorites to win the West and represent the Western Conference in the NBA Finals if all goes well. So the Phoenix Suns are definitely contenders in my eyes. Moving on to Los Angeles Clippers, they are contenders as well. The team got very, very better after the NBA, before the NBA All-Star Weekend and during the NBA trade deadline. They revamped their bench, acquiring guys like Mason Plumlee, Bones Highland from the Denver Nuggets, and Eric Gordon from the Houston Rockets. Mason Plumlee, of course, coming from the the Charlotte Hornets. But now they acquired Russell Westbrook today. Russell Westbrook was bought out of his Utah Jazz contract and now acquired to play for the rest of the season for the Los Angeles Clippers. So those are 4 key additions that's going to help the Clippers moving forward for the remainder of the season. And it's definitely for the second half of the NBA season. I look at this team. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are definitely starting to heat up and lock in. They're 2 guys that love to take time off for load management, but it looks like Kawhi Leonard is starting to lock in. It looks like Paul George is starting to lock in. I like this team's chances. They're 8th in defensive rating this year, and they have 8 players averaging double figures on a nightly basis. So I like this team moving forward, especially with the key addition of Russell Westbrook. It's going to be interesting to see if they start him at the point guard or they bring him off the bench like the Los Angeles Lakers did this NBA season. So I definitely like the chances of the Los Angeles Clippers competing in the West. Therefore, they're contenders. Moving on to Sacramento Kings. I believe this team is pretenders. Now, right now, they're currently the 3rd best team in the Western Conference. Good news if you're a Sacramento Kings fan out there watching and listening. I don't know much, but hey, maybe you're a Kings fan watching and listening to this. But the Kings, if you're a Kings fan, you finally have a chance to break the playoff cycle. After missing the playoffs for the last 16 seasons, the last playoff appearance for the Sacramento Kings came in 2007, and that is the longest playoff drought in the NBA today. Out of all 30 teams making the playoffs, that is the longest drought the Sacramento Kings have right now. As good as the roster they have right now, and they're surprising me this season, led by Darren Fox and Sabonis, and the rest of the Kings roster as like I just said, has been tremendous this year. Being the third team in the West, I don't believe this is going to last much longer. The Western Conference has definitely gotten better and definitely will be more competitive in the second half of the NBA season. When you look at the ratings, there's a lot of teams that's jammed up right on top of each other. Seedings could be placed, could be moved on a nightly basis. The Kings could fall all the way from the third seed all the way to the sixth or seventh seed. That's how competitive and that's how bumper to bumper it is in the Western Conference. We talk about records wise right now. I just don't think it's going to last much longer for the Kings. Therefore, I do believe they are going to be pretenders, and I just don't see them being a top-notch team in the first round. Memphis Grizzlies, they are contenders. However, I will say, Ja Morant, remember once upon a time you said you were fine in the West and you would see the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. Well, I hate to break the news to you, and it's breaking news to the whole entire Grizzlies team. You're not fine in the West. The West has gotten 10 times better since that statement came out, since that interview came out. But all jokes aside, the Grizzlies will be in the mix come playoff time. I do believe they're going to be right where they picked off last year. I watched this young team grow last year, beating the Timberwolves in the first round of the playoffs, sending Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards home packing. We watched this team grow up young. Grow up in front of our eyes. They were just 2 games away of taking out the Golden State Warriors last year, losing that series in the second round 4-2, and by game 6. So they gave them a run for their money. So I believe that this team's gonna be right back in the mix this playoff run. I do believe they're gonna go maybe to the second or to the Western Conference. Everything's play out, but I do believe the Grizzlies will be contenders. And that's last but not least. The Denver Nuggets, they are definitely contenders. When I look at this roster, they have the best depth in the Western Conference. It'll be hard for anybody to beat this team in a best-of-7 series. When I look at Jokic, who is a shoo-in to win his third MVP in a row this year, averaging a triple-double. You have Jokic, you have Jamal Murray, you have Michael Porter Jr., you have Aaron Gordon, you have Caldwell Pope, who can shoot the ball effectively. You have DeAndre Jordan come off your bench. Jeff Green, who is a guy that who goes beyond to help out on the depth of the bench. You have Reggie Jackson, who they just acquired from the Los Angeles Clippers. He's a part of their bench now. Thomas Bryant, who they acquired from the Los Angeles Lakers. He's a part of their bench now. So to me, on paper, they have the most depth in the West. The West has taken advantage of the Denver Nuggets over the years. When you think about it over the last 2 years, due to the fact that this team has not truly been healthy come playoff time. You look how their run went in 2021 when they matched up against the Phoenix Suns. They were swept in a 7-game series in the second round in 2021. You look at 2022 when they were the 6th seed. They unfortunately had to go against the Golden State Warriors, and they were gentlemen swept, losing that series 4-1 in the first round to the Golden State Warriors. This team has not been healthy, but this team looks like they're getting healthy at the right time. When Jokic had a healthy Jamal Murray and a healthy Michael Porter Jr., you see what they did in the playoffs in the 2020. Don't give me that excuse it was the bubble. That is when the players shined the most, in my opinion, because there was no NBA audience to help them on. This was guys balling in an empty gym to see who was the best in a 7-game series. And the Denver Nuggets brought it in the 2020 playoffs when they took out the Jazz in a 7-game series healthy. They took out the Los Angeles Clippers team led by Doc Rivers at the time coaching. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George came back from a 3-1 deficit and sent the Clippers home packing in the bubble, winning that series in Game 7. And went all the way to the Western Conference Finals in the 2020 playoffs when healthy. So when healthy, this Denver Nuggets team is good enough to compete against anybody in the Western Conference. To me, the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets are right now my favorites to make it out of the West. It's going to be hard for anybody to beat this Denver Nuggets team when healthy in the playoffs. But those are my pretenders and contenders in the Western Conference heading into the second half of the NBA season.